teleconference board meeting. I'd like to thank the Chief Probation Officers, Karen Pank and Whitney Morris, for providing us meeting room here in Palm Springs, and talk a little bit about the logistics for this meeting. This is a teleconference meeting, so when you're speaking, please identify yourself by name, speak clearly so that all the participants can hear you, and if you're not speaking, please remember to put your phone on mute. I'd like to now announce where everybody is while attending this teleconference meeting, and beginning here at the Hyatt in Palm Springs, the Chino Boardroom at 285 North Palm Canyon Drive. There is board members from CDCR, Scott Kernan and Jerry Powers, Chief Rottola and Chief Varela representing their various jurisdictions. Moving to the Department of Community Relations office in Chula Vista at 2015 Birch Road, Suite 221 is Chief Bejarano. From the Kern County Administrative Office in Bakersfield at 1115 Truxton Avenue on the 5th floor, we have Supervisor Perez. And from the Steinhardt Law, good morning, Letitia. From the Steinhardt Law Office in Mill Valley, we have at 205 Camino Alto Boulevard, Suite 265, we have Mr. Steinhardt. And from the Lassen County Sheriff's Office in Susanville at 1415 Sheriff Caddy Lane, we have Sheriff Grouden. And I believe, maybe not present yet, but Ms. Turner is at the BSCC location in Sacramento at 2590 Venture Oaks Drive, and checking in to see if Ms. Turner has arrived yet.
Ms. Turner has not yet arrived. But
okay.
She is on her way.
We're going to somebody asking something? Is that Letitia?
Yes, it is. Was I asked a question?
No.
Okay, got it. Folks coming in and out. No problem.
All right. Pushing that up a little bit. Today we're going to vote. We're going to have to do the votes by roll call. So when we get around to vote, you can take your phones off mute and you can weigh in verbally. And now, Adam, you start the roll call to see if we have presence of a quorum today.
Chair Penner.
Present.
Mr. Kernan.
Here.
Mr. Powers.
Here.
Mr. Grouden.
Here.
Mr. Moore is absent today. Ms. Perez.
Present, thank you.
Mr. Varela.
Here.
Mr. Rottola.
Here.
Mr. Bejarano.
Good morning, President.
Mr. Budnick is absent today. Mr. Steinhardt.
Here.
And Ms. Tornar is here, but she's running late.
Okay, thank you. In terms of my report, I'm going to make it very brief today, but I would like to congratulate and announce the appointment of Sheriff Gore of San Diego and Chief Varela of Ventura County. And at this point, I would like to swear in Chief Varela, who is in Palm Springs with us today. So, Chief, if you wouldn't mind standing, and we'll do the oath of office. Ready for the picture moment? I state your name.
I, Mark Varela,
Do solemnly swear
do swear
that I will support the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of California.
and to the Constitution of California.
I take this obligation freely,
I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
And that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you, Chief. Nice job. It's always a challenge. One of us talks fast, and it's not Chief Varela. much as possible, because it's not fair, it's just not fair. I'd also like to acknowledge, counsel for the BSCC, Aaron McGuire, is present in Sacramento. Are you there, Aaron?
I'm here, President.
Okay.
Madam Chair, David Steinhardt here. I have a question.
Yes.
Members of the public, you did not discuss how we would involve them. I have a member of the public at my remote location, and how would you like to proceed in making sure that they get their opportunity when it comes?
Well, good point. We're not quite there yet. I think at this point we would handle it like any other meeting and move forward until we got to the consent portion of the agenda or the action items, and then ask them to, at the remote locations, express their desire to speak on a particular item, and in Sacramento to do a speaker's card.
Got it.
Suitable?
Yes, thank you.
All right. And before we move on, Chief Varela, would you like to make any remarks today?
The only remarks I'd like to make is I'm excited to be part of the Board of State Community Corrections. I'm on my 30th year as a probation officer in all in Ventura County. I'm the past president of Chief Probation Officers in California. I have a passion for the work, and I feel like my years of experience and various positions within CBOC and within the County of Ventura has given me a real unique perspective and some good insight, and I believe this experience will help the board moving forward. So I'm looking forward to this 3-year term, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. We're very fortunate to have you here. And as we talk about appointments, and I'd like to acknowledge Supervisor Perez has also been reappointed by the governor's office to the board, and I'd like to extend my congratulations to you, Supervisor Perez.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Got it.
And I'd also like to thank former board members, Sheriff Jeff Dean and Chief Michelle Scray Brown, for their years of service to the board and the great work that they have done. We hope to acknowledge them at our September meeting, if we can get them to show up just one last time. And also today, I'm saddened to say that Secretary Kernan has made a decision to retire from CDCR as Secretary in August of this year, and both personally and professionally, it has been really my pleasure to work with you. I would also right now put you on the spot and invite you to make sure you're at our September meeting so we can do this appropriately with the full body to acknowledge your work, and ask you if you have anything you want to say today.
I just really, I will come to San Diego, but it's been a pleasure working with all of you. You guys do important work, and this is an important aspect of criminal justice in the state. It's just been an honor to work with you all.
Well, thank you. I have a strong suspicion we'll see him here and there. I don't think that his skills will go untapped prior to his retiring in August. In fact, we probably shouldn't be allowed to use the word retirement when it refers to you. Next, we hope that the Judicial Council will select a judge to fill the vacancy on the board. They are meeting, I think, in the next couple of weeks, and so we hope to have their appointment in the very near future. Moving on now, I've attended a number of meetings over the last month, but I'm actually going to forego a great deal of that and move directly to the Executive Director's Report. It's a little cumbersome and difficult to do this in a teleconference, so I'd like to just move as rapidly as I can through some of the perfunctory parts of this agenda. So, not that you're going to say now, Katie, it's perfunctory, although we might refer to your reports like that behind your back. Yes.
Understood. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I will be brief, picking up on that cue so helpfully just given. I just wanted to actually start by saying thank you to all the board members, first of all, for holding this July date, and for almost everybody on the board being able to arrange their schedules to be here. As you know, when we set the calendar for the year, we asked you to hold the July date tentatively because we only do a July meeting if there are budget-related actions or any other time-sensitive matters that the board needs to take action on. And this year, as you can see, because we do have a full binder of materials for you, some administrative issues, the delegation of authority for some signature issues, as well as a number of budget-related things did in addition to what you have in the board materials here for, launching 2 new grant programs that have come to the BSCC through this year's budget process and a continuation of the CalVIT grant, there were a number of things in the budget as well that I only want to provide very small highlights of. This year's budget was quite interesting. There definitely were some additional funding decisions made that affect the BSCC and that we'll be talking about today. And oftentimes when there are criminal justice related things that the budget needs to figure out somebody to administer, the BSCC is asked to basically just be a pass-through state agency to provide funding. So some of those additional things beyond what we're talking about today included $8.7 million to Kings County for a public safety infrastructure project, $3 million to the city of Stockton for a helicopter, funding for the Boys and Girls Club of Fullerton, and a few other things. So those are some of the responsibilities that we'll carry out on an administrative basis. We provided an updated legislative report in your information items. So I would like to just provide that much of an executive director's report to you today. And of course, happy to take any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for the board members? Okay, moving on. I'm told that Ms. Tornow has arrived. Are you there, Francine?
I am. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for those efforts you made. They sounded heroic this morning trying to get to the meeting. I appreciate it. And now moving to a legal update from Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. As always, we have a closed session agenda item on the agenda, but I don't think it requires us to go into closed session today, but we have had some significant legal updates and activities with regard to the litigation surrounding our burn JAG funding. So I'd like to give that update to you now. 2 weeks ago, the U.S. Department of Justice released some of the burn JAG funding following the Seventh Circuit's decision to lift what was a nationwide injunction that was blocking the notice and access conditions as part of the burn JAG awards. That injunction is still in place for the city of Chicago. It's just that the application of the nationwide injunction has been lifted for now. However, even though USDOJ has released the funds, California has received no information about the status of its award. The Office of Justice Planning has posted a list of recipient state and local jurisdictions to its website, but California is not on it, nor is any local California jurisdiction listed. You may recall that local jurisdictions can apply directly for burn JAG funding as well. Also, it looks like Oregon, Vermont, and Illinois did not make that funding list as well because they have issues regarding the notice and access conditions as well. Last week, in a parallel case that we've been following, which is the United States versus California, this is the lawsuit in which the federal government sued the state of California over 3 different sets of laws that the legislature recently enacted. AB 103, which regarded the inspection of federal immigration detention facilities, AB 450, which dealt with employers and federal immigration agents coming onto the premises of those private employers' facilities, and SB 54, which prohibits the sharing of certain information for purposes of immigration enforcement. The feds had asked the federal court in the Eastern District to enjoin the application of those laws. That request for a preliminary injunction was denied last week by Judge Mendez. And then on Monday, Judge Mendez granted the state's motion to dismiss in that case, finding, and in particular for our purposes, that there was no conflict between SB 54 and 8 USC 1373, which is that issue with the burn JAG funding. With that in mind, however, the federal government has 60 days to appeal that motion to dismiss. There's no indication at this time as to whether or not the federal government is going to do so. And that case continues going forward if they do appeal, obviously. And then with respect to the other litigation at issue, which is California versus Sessions, which is the case in which our state attorney general sued the federal government about the notice and access conditions in the Burn Jack funding. The status of that case is that it's ongoing. The state has just filed its motion for summary judgment on Monday, and the hearing in that case is scheduled to be heard on September 5th. And that should resolve, hopefully will resolve the issues with respect to California's eligibility for the funding. And so that is just the status update on those cases.
Thank you. Any questions of council regarding this report? Hearing none. Just to reiterate, Mr. Steinhardt's suggestion, I'd like to remind everyone who wishes to make a public comment today to let the board members at your remote locations know, and I'd ask the board members in those remote locations to keep a keen eye out for anyone who wants to make a comment. In Sacramento, we'll continue with our common practice, which is to fill out a comment card and give it to Tracy or Adam, who are in the room at the Venture Oaks location. And we'll just try to pause and go slowly to make sure we've covered all the bases as we move forward. Moving now to consent items. That's items A, B, and C on the agenda. Asking if there's any comments or anybody wants to pull any items from the consent agenda.
David Steinhardt here. Linda, don't want to pull an item, but my name was left off the attendance roster agenda. I was there in June, so just would like to have me added to the last page of the agenda where my name is missing.
Okay, and I want to say that I can provide evidence that you were there.
Thank you, Linda.
We have a number of people that are willing to, cover for you on that situation. Thanks, David. That's good. Anybody else with any items to be pulled or any comments? Any members of the public asking for an item to be pulled or have any comments on any of those? Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion on the consent agenda.
Mike Rotolo will make a motion to approve the minutes.
Scott Curtis, second.
We have a motion and a second. We will poll the votes from Adam. Adam, if you wouldn't mind.
Chair Penner,
Yes?
Mr. Kerman,
Yes.
Mr. Powers?
Yes.
Mr. Grattan,
Yeah.
Ms. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Varela,
I'll abstain. I was not there for the June 7th meeting.
Mr. Ursola,
Yes.
Mr. Bejarano,
Yes.
Mr. Steinhardt,
Yes.
Ms. Porter.
Yes.
That's 9 and 1 abstain. The motion carries.
Thank you, Adam. Now moving to the discussion items, I move to item D. The Youth Reinvestment Grant Program for the appointment of a chair and the establishment of the Executive Steering Committee. Kim, are you on that item, Richard?
Yes, I am.
Or are you? Would you begin your presentation on that?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. The purpose of this item is to let you know about a new grant program that will be administered by the BSCC and to request your action on several steps needed to begin the process of grant development. The Youth Reinvestment Grant was established late last month with enactment of the state budget and associated trailer bill. The new grant will provide $37.3 million over the next 3 years, and of that, 94%, or just over $35 million, must be awarded to local jurisdictions through a competitive grant process for implementing evidence-based, trauma-informed, culturally relevant, and developmentally appropriate diversion programs in underserved communities with high rates of juvenile arrest and high rates of racial and ethnic disproportionality within those arrest rates. Another 3%, or about 1.1 million, must be awarded to Indian tribes for implementing diversion programs for Indian children using trauma-informed, community-based, and health-based interventions. The final 3% is available to the BSCC for administration of the grant program. The primary purpose of the Youth Reinvestment Grant Program is to divert low-level offenders from initial contact with the juvenile justice system. The eligible grant applicants are cities and counties, and these local jurisdictions would be eligible to apply for grant award funds in the amount of $50,000 to $1 million. Local jurisdictions competing for these funds must provide a 25% match and must pass through 90% of any awarded funds to community-based organizations to deliver services in underserved communities with high rates of juvenile arrests. There is a caveat to the match requirement, and that is that the match may be reduced to 10% if the BSCC identifies a local jurisdiction with a high need, but little or no local infrastructure for diversion programming. The community-based organizations that would receive these pass-through funds must have experience serving at-risk populations and must be able to provide services in all 5 of the following areas: diversion and alternatives to arrest, incarceration, or other formal involvement with the juvenile justice system, academic and vocational education, mentoring, behavioral health, and mental health services. Applicant jurisdictions will be required to designate a lead public agency that will be responsible for coordinating with local law enforcement agencies, social service agencies, and nonprofit organizations in implementing the local grant program. In administering the Youth Reinvestment Grant, BSCC will seek input from the California Health and Human Services Agency and the California Department of Education. In addition, the BSCC is required to fund and enter into a contract with a research firm or a university to conduct a statewide evaluation of the grant program and to produce a report of grantees, projects, and outcomes at the state and local levels upon completion of the 3-year period. The funds allocated for this new grant are available for the next 3 years or until June 30th of 2021. Our grant development generally takes about 1 year, so we're hoping to get started as soon as possible. And accordingly, we are requesting that you take action today in the following 3 areas. First, to appoint a chairperson for an executive steering committee for the Youth Reinvestment Grant. Second, to delegate authority to that chairperson to work with BSCC staff to establish a diverse executive steering committee with relevant subject matter expertise and to modify membership as needed. And third, to authorize the executive steering committee to oversee development of the Youth Reinvestment Grant request for proposals and make funding recommendations. With your approval today, the next step will be to get a posting on our website that will inform the public about this new grant and provide an open opportunity for interested individuals to submit statements of interest in serving on the executive steering committee. I would also just note that our website will also offer an opportunity for interested individuals to submit public comment. Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Kimberly. This is some great news, some extraordinary funding going out into the field. It is ambitious and complicated. And I'm looking forward to this task as we approach this enormous opportunity, and asking the board if there's any comments or questions before we move on to any recommendation approval. Anybody out in the field? Any questions or comments from the public on this issue? Hearing none, I'd like to now turn to the issue of appointing a chair for this executive steering committee. And David, if I do that, I don't want to catch you off guard because I have asked Mr. Steinhardt if he would chair this effort. I also have some good news, I think, in that we have a co-chair that would like to join the effort with new board member Chief Varela. So I'm hoping that this body would approve David Steinhardt and Chief Varela as co-chairs.
Madam Chair, this is Aaron McGuire. I just want to make sure that Chief Varela also is aware, and Mr. Steinhardt as well, that by chairing the executive steering committees, that their respective agencies would not be eligible for applying for the funding.
But would that preclude anybody from Ventura County from participating?
No, it would not. Was that Chief Varela?
Yes.
Yeah, it would just preclude the probation department from Ventura County from applying for the money or receiving.
This is David chiming in. It would preclude Ventura from being the lead agency for as required for the community-based partners that would be funded. Isn't that right, Aaron?
Well, the conflict of interest concerns in terms of the financial issue is department specific. So it wouldn't necessarily preclude Ventura County from applying, but it would prevent Ventura County Probation Department from receiving any of the funds, either as a direct recipient or as a subcontractor.
Aaron, would it be okay today, as a matter of process, to tentatively move forward with this recommendation of these co-chairs and allow Chief Varela to decline the appointment down the road should that become something issue?
That would be fine, Madam Chair, provided that no grant development.
It would be sooner, yeah.
Yeah, sooner rather than later. Yes, that would be fine, Madam Chair.
Okay. Is that suitable to you, Mr. Steinhardt?
You guys work it out. I didn't know that it was going to be a co-chair situation, but I welcome Chief Varela as a partner in this. I just want to say on my behalf that I follow the development of this grant program very closely in the legislature. And I'm truly pleased that BSCC is now in a position to allocate these resources to our community-based juvenile justice partners. So they will be more thoroughly involved in the solutions we need. So yes, I would accept the nomination. I agree with you, Chief, or Madam Chair, that this is a very complex grant involving many challenges, including conflict of interest challenges in getting that ESC together. But I look forward to it and accept the nomination.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your willingness. Are there any board members that want to comment on any of the proposed recommendations? Now that we have a chair and a co-chair. Are there any comments from the public on this matter? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion and a second.
Give you a motion.
Thank you.
Kernan.
Scott Kernan, motion. Looking for a
Dean
second.
Brown, second.
Second from Dean Brown. Thank you, Sheriff. Adam, can we do a roll call?
Chair Penner,
Approve?
Mr. Kernan,
Approve.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Mr. Gradden,
Yes.
Ms. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Varela,
Yes.
Mr. Urtola,
Yes.
Mr. Bejarano,
Yes.
Mr. Steinhardt,
Yes.
Ms. Torno.
Yes.
10-0-0, the motion carries.
Thank you, Adam. And thank you to everybody for your willingness to participate on this effort. Moving now to item E on the agenda. the Adult Reentry Grant Program. Pauline Stoner, are you moving forward to talk with us today?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Madam Chairman and board members. This is Pauline Stoner. I'm
Pauline,
presenting.
you're gonna have to speak up, I think. You're getting closer to the phone or the microphone or wherever you're at.
I'll switch places. All right, is that better?
Oh, much better. Much better, thanks.
Yes. Good morning. This is Pauline Stoner. I'm presenting agenda item E, which is an action item requesting board approval to create an executive steering committee that will oversee the development of a request for proposal process for the Adult Reentry Grant Program. Senate Bill 840, Budget Act of 2018, established the Adult Reentry Grant Program on June 14, 2018, and appropriated $50 million in funding. The Board of State and Community Corrections is to award the funding through a competitive bid process to community-based organizations to support offenders who were formerly incarcerated in state prison. Senate Bill 840 further directs the board to form an executive steering committee to oversee the development of a request for proposals with members from relevant state agencies and departments with expertise in public health, housing, workforce development, and rehabilitative treatment. Representatives are to include, but are not limited to, the Department of Housing and Community Development, Office of Health Equity, County Probation, representatives of reentry-focused community-based organizations, criminal justice impacted individuals, and representatives of housing-focused community-based organizations. There will be opportunities for stakeholders and public input into the process for this grant, and upon approval by the board for this agenda item, staff will post information about the executive steering committee on the BSCC website. The $50 million in funding is to be allocated as follows: $25 million for rental assistance, $15 million for the rehabilitation of existing property or buildings for housing offenders released from prison, $9,350,000 to support the warm handoff and reentry of offenders transitioning from prison to communities, $150,000 to support the Berkeley Underground Scholars Initiative, and $500,000 to the BSCC for costs to administer the grant programs and report on program outcomes. The funding is available for expenditure until June 30th, 2021. The staff recommendations are included in your report, but I will now pass the matter off to Chair Penner for further discussion by the board.
Okay. We're giving lots of opportunities this year. This one is a really exciting opportunity that is like nothing we've done before. I think this will be complex and sort of a brand new effort as it rolls out to assist community-based programs and organizations to provide services that we saw in the recommendation today. We're looking for comments from any of the board members on this issue.
Madam Chair, this is Katie Howard. Just to also let everyone know, as Kimberly outlined on the Youth Reinvestment Grant, we will also post information on our website and request people to submit statements of interest. Serve on the Executive Steering Committee, again, meeting all of the goals and having the subject matter expertise and life experiences for that broad base that we need in this new grant program.
Okay. Anyone in the public like to comment on this matter?
Madam Chair, I have a member of the public in my location that does wish to comment on the reentry grant. It's Renee Menard from the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice.
Welcome, Renee.
Thank you. Sorry, we were doing just a little switcheroo so I could get close to the phone. But on both with regards to the reentry ESC and the previous Youth Reinvestment Fund ESC, I just want to thank the chairs for their leadership on these agendas. And I think that it will provide an amazing opportunity for the communities to benefit from these grants. I would like to ask that directly impacted individuals and community-based organizations be highly considered in the ESC compilation with recognition for their unique expertise that they provide. And I would also like to offer up CJCJ's expertise in this area to serve as a resource for the board in connecting with community-based candidates.
Oh, thank you. And I think I can speak on behalf of the board and the BSCC staff. We're committed to doing exactly what you request. And I think our Prop 47 experiences and some other ESCs as we've established in the recent past has demonstrated that. So we're looking forward to continuing that effort. Anyone else from the public? Back to the board. Any comments from the board as we move forward on the recommendation? We are looking for a chair and a co-chair for this executive steering committee. As I looked at it, recognizing the complexity and the nature of the different way of doing business that the board was facing, I volunteered to co-chair this effort, and I reached out to Francine Tornow and invited her to be the co-chair, and she graciously agreed to do that. So, Francine, would you like to say anything?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to work with you. You're definitely my spirit animal, so I think it's going to be a lot of excitement with the work that I do. With the work that I do with the community, I think that this is awesome that the board is going to provide the opportunity for the CBOs to directly receive funding, and I think that's where the majority of the passion is with the communities that are out there doing it day in and day out, which is why they do it. So I'm excited to move forward on this, and I think it's going to be great for the reentry. And I know that housing is a huge issue for people coming out of prison. So to see a large amount of money allocated to that just provides them, the reentry candidates, the opportunity to get employed and, you know, move their lives forward, which is what rehabilitation is all about. So thanks again for the opportunity.
Oh, you couldn't have said it better, Francine. I appreciate your remarks. I mean, truly, talking about having that kind of resources for rental assistance and rehabbing properties for housing is it's a really exciting endeavor. So anyone else from the board want to comment before we move on with this item? Hearing none, I look for a motion and a second on the recommendations as they stand with now the new information that I, along with Ms. Tornauer, will co-chair this ESC.
I'm proud to make a motion to spirit animal.
So nice. So nice.
And I will second that.
So,
Mark Perrella.
okay, we have a first and a second. Adam, would you poll the body?
Chair Penner,
Yes?
Mr. Kernan,
Yes.
Mr. Powers, Mr. Groudon,
Yes.
Ms. Perez,
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Varela,
Yes.
Mr. Urtola,
Yes.
Mr. Bejarano,
Yes.
Mr. Steinhardt,
Yes.
Ms. Torn.
Yes.
10 ayes, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. Moving on now to item F.
Madam Chair, this is David Bejarano.
Oh, David, thank you for weighing in. I think we're going to hear the click of the phone as you recuse yourself on this item.
Correct. I do have a conflict with item F, so I will recuse myself. There are no members of the public in my location, so I'll go ahead and end my participation on the conference call.
All right, Chief, we'll see you in September, if not before, and thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Chief, this item is California Violence Intervention Prevention Grant, and I'd invite Colleen Curtin to present.
Before that, Madam Chair, just for the record and for the minutes, what Mr. Berjano was alluding to was the fact that he does have a conflict of interest. Within the meaning of the Government Code, Section 1091, he has a remote interest because he is a member of the Board of Directors of the South Bay Community Services organization, which is in line to receive some CalVIP funding, which Ms. Curtin will now discuss.
Thank you, counsel.
All right, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is Colleen Curtin, Field Representative in the Corrections Planning and Grant Programs Division. I'm here to present Agenda Item F, requesting approval to award $9 million in new grant funding for the California Violence Intervention and Prevention Program, also known as CalVIP. This funding was made available with the enactment of the fiscal year 2018-19 state budget. Of this new $9 million, the Budget Act requires a non-competitive grant in the amount of $1 million to the City of Los Angeles and allows that up to 5% or $450,000 be made available to the BSCC for costs associated with administration of the grant. The remaining $7,550,000 must be made available as a competitive grant available to California cities and community-based organizations, or CBOs. You will recall that at its April 2018 meeting, the board approved 20 grant awards under the CalVIP program using fiscal year 17-18 funds, totaling $9.215 million. These grants commenced on May 1st, 2018 for a 2-year grant period ending on April 30th, 2020. Because the statutory requirements for this new funding mirror those of last year, including a 100% match and a 50% pass-through to 2 CBOs by the city grantees, this agenda item requests board approval to move down the ranked list developed by the CalVIP Executive Steering Committee to award a second cohort of eligible CalVIP grants. In awarding the new CalVIP funds, staff recommends that the board evenly split the funding between city and CBO applicants, as was recommended by the CalVIP BSC, with approximately $3.8 million available for cities and $3.8 million available for CBOs. 2 of the grants awarded this past April received only partial awards because they fell at the funding cutoff point on the ranked list. If this recommendation is approved, these 2 grants can be made whole with this new funding. An additional 8 grants to cities, including the City of Los Angeles, and 6 grants to CBOs can then be made. Because of their place on the ranked list, 1 additional city and 1 additional CBO would again receive partial funding. The 2-year grant period for the second cohort will begin September 1st, 2018 and end August 31st, 2020. In the coming weeks, staff will communicate with this new set of grantees to work on the development of their contracts so that they are ready to go by the September 1st start date. In conclusion, staff recommends that the board, number 1, augment the awards of the City of Pasadena and the Young Visionaries Youth Leadership Academy, both partially funded in the first cohort, to bring them to their full requested amounts. Number 2, fund the City of Los Angeles for a $1 million non-competitive grant as authorized in statute. Should the City of Los Angeles not apply for this award, allow the BSCC to continue down the ranked city list. Number 3, fully fund 7 additional city proposals and 6 additional CBO proposals for programs and initiatives to prevent and reduce violence. And number 4, partially fund the City of Lompoc and the Options Recovery Services, which fall at the funding cutoff points on the city and CBO ranked lists, respectively. In the event a grantee is unable to accept the conditional grant award, staff recommends that the board authorize staff to accept relinquished awards and offer conditional awards to city or CBO grantees next in line on the applicable city or CBO rank ordered list. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Colleen. This is government being expedient. This is what I think is a great recommendation and another opportunity to quickly get money out to the field. I'd like to thank you for all your hard work, Colleen, and Chief Brown, our former board member who chaired this executive steering committee, for all of her great work. Looking now to the board for any discussion, comments on this item.
David Steinhardt. I actually have some questions. So if can you hear me here?
Yeah.
Okay. So this would take the new 9.0 million and spread it around in what looks like a very efficient manner as described by staff. My question was, we had a very good ESC develop the RFP and approve the prior grant round. Was that ESC involved in this plan? Are they aware of it? It seems like we're bypassing the stakeholder input on this, but I could be wrong on that.
Actually, the work was completed, I think, less than 3 months ago, and the money actually, for the most part, hasn't gone into implementation yet, but has been granted. We thought this was the most expedient way to continue after a very short period of time from the last convening of the executive steering committee. I can't say specifically if the ESC was consulted on whether or not they wanted us to do this. Colleen, do you have any input on that?
We were able to speak with one member of the ESC who was aware that this funding was going to be a part of the budget. So yes, we did consult with one member.
And I assume Chief Brown was aware of this?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay.
Well, just to continue, I'm a little troubled by that. I like the plan overall, but I really feel that we are a stakeholder-based outfit when it comes to these allocations. This is a lot of money, and I know many of the ESC members and those interested in the grant. So I find it perplexing that the ESC was not involved in this sort of quick redistribution. There may have been questions about having a longer performance period for some of the grants. I don't know if that was even possible. I see the proposal to add 7 new grants, and I'm not sure how the ESC involved in deciding who those grantees would be. So, I mean, I don't want to, put up barriers to moving swiftly, but I just want to say that it just seems odd to me.
David, this is Katie Howard and members of the board. Just to clarify, just to be sure that you're clear on what the recommendation is, this is the ranked list that the ESC produced for the last round of grants. So consistent with substantial prior practice on the part of the board, when we can go further down the list, we do so. There are many ways in which this is different because it's new funding. And yes, it was the recommendation of staff that since this ranked list with a very significant dollar number being asked and a lot more unmet need on a very recent list, that the upside of getting the funding out to the field early was viewed as a real positive, and that these are the recommendations from the last ESC.
Okay, I'm not going to belabor this, but I have one final question. On the 7 new proposals, would those go to the additional rankings that this ESC determined previously? In other words, would we, on those new grants, be going down that ESC recommendation list?
Yeah, it is going directly down the list. And if you look at attachment F1, I think you'll see that it follows directly down that list. And actually, we think this actually was a positive move for our stakeholders at large, because this process itself, the initial money was less than 12 weeks down the road. And I actually thought this was a demonstration of government at its finest, finally moving something fast.
And Madam Chair, if I could comment, this is Colleen Curtin. I have spoken to all of the potential grantees. All are excited, ready to get back to implementing the proposals that they submitted this past January. And so I have a feeling that all these grants will move forward and be ready to go September 1st.
Excellent.
Okay, any more comments, questions by the board? Moving now to the public. Any comments, questions from the public? Hearing none, may I get a motion and a second?
Mike Rotolo will make motion to accept this, agenda item.
Second, by Scott Kernan.
Adam, will you take the roll?
Chair Penner,
Yes?
Mr. Kernan,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Mr. Gravitt,
Yes.
Ms. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Varela,
Yes.
Mr. Urtola. Was that, yeah? Mr. Steinhardt,
Yes.
Ms. Norman.
Any abstentions? Oh, Francine? Francine,
Yes, oh, she said yes. We have 1 recused and 9 ayes. The motion carries.
Thank you, thank you. All right, moving on. Before we close this meeting, after finishing the formal agenda, I would invite any members of the public, if they have any comments, any members of the board, any closing comments, and come forward now. Okay, hearing none. I think I waited.
Chair Penner, we do
Yeah.
have a public comment in Sacramento.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Luis Angel, and I'm coming from Stockton, California, with Fathers and Families in San Joaquin. And I just want to say the Youth Reinvestment Fund, I was personally there, and I think it's a historic thing, you know. It's very, it's a good opportunity for our youth to get redirected into, you know, diversion programs and really be able to get that mentoring and that help that they need. Because obviously it's locking them up for these minor offenses. They're not working and they're just reoffending and coming back to juvenile hall. Once you're put on probation, I know from personal experience, it's easy to go back in. You're just constantly going in and out, and I think it's just amazing. You know, this is a good time that I've seen right now. So thank you, appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
And thank you.
It's something to celebrate, so thank you for your comments. Anybody else?
We have another public comment in Sacramento.
Okay.
I'm about to. Good morning, buenos dias. My name is Daniel Mendoza. I'm a student at UC Davis. I'm also a policy intern at Fathers and Families San Joaquin. Just a couple comments. I think I might be late in this process, stuff like that, but in terms of action item E, the adult reentry grant program, and I was looking at the potential distribution of the funds, right? And I'm totally down with all of them, right? But I think something I would like for you folks to consider, or whoever's in charge, kind of bringing up these ways of distributing the funds is like, we often forget about those developing programs and organizations that at times are not, I don't want to say taken seriously, but it's something they don't have good sponsors and stuff like that. But they're doing the same work that the Berkeley Underground Scholars are doing. They're doing the same work that some of these state programs and organizations are doing, but are often not recognized because again they don't have the 501c3, I believe, title or stuff like that. So if we can look into potentially considering and finding ways to really start funding those grassroots programs and developing organizations that are currently doing the work. I myself, we don't have an underground scholarship initiative at UC Davis, but we do have a student club, and oftentimes we lack funding, and I know of other schools and other programs such like mine where we're not necessarily recognized by the institution, but again, I've had some of our own members been refused housing. It's hard to find work, and so the same reasons are needed in other places, not just the ones mentioned here. So I guess I just just consider that we start looking to just beyond the regular places that we usually look at to distribute funds and stuff like that. I'll just leave it at that, and I appreciate you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any further speakers, Adam?
And we are good in Sacramento.
Okay. Any of the other remote locations, any speakers would like to comment? Hearing none, I think it would be appropriate to adjourn this meeting, and we'll see you all September 6th in San Diego. Thank you all.
Thank you.